Coming up this week on the Digital Lifestyle Show, Gary's here, and we're going to catch up on the news. We had a news show for a couple of weeks, so we'll be catching up that. We're talking some music tech, smart home tech, new smart home tech, some old, not so smart home tech in this form of cines and old equipment, and EV news and lots more. So let's get straight to Gary. Gary, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah,
my bandwidth is terrible at the moment. I seem to be about 200 baud, so I apologise if there's any makeup.
Well, it's coming through nice and clear, so that's okay.
That's fair enough.
So we're back. So we did a live stream last week, so we didn't do a show last
very
week.
Good it was too. I caught up with it a little bit later, but yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, so quite enjoyed doing that one. So we did digital sounds on the mob wave, analog sounds on the wave state. So quite enjoyed doing that one. So thanks to everybody that joined those, and they're available on the YouTube channel as well. So and we've got a couple of guests coming up for the next few weeks. So this will be a news recap before we go into a few different interview shows coming up. So we have got some really interesting sound design guests coming up for the next 2 weeks, actually. So I don't want to give too much away, but if you've got an M1 or a wave state or a wave station or any Korg synth, one of the guests you've definitely heard of, one of the guests you should hear from. So lots of interesting stuff coming on there. So we've got a few bits and pieces for this week's show. I've got a couple of sound packs I wanted to talk about. We had some new builds of Windows we can talk about, and I don't know if anything else that you had.
I'll talk a bit of home automation stuff, and we'll talk about things going on.
Yeah, excellent. So, on the let's start with the some music tech stuff. So something a bit different this week. I've been doing all these sound designs for the new synths, but I thought I'd do one for an oldish synth. So this is a sound pack that I did for the Korg Minilogue. So that's a 2016 analog synth from Korg, proper analog synth, and so it's actually quite a fun synth to program. One that's got a bit neglected from me recently, so I haven't used it a lot, but it's a really nice sort of proper traditional analog synth to program. So polysynth. So I programmed that. So I created these sounds and I shared those. So there is about 20 odd patches or something like that, maybe 20 odd patches that you can download and install into your mob wave. So there's a tutorial with them as well, and sort of how I created those sounds. So you can get those from justlifestyle.com, and I've got lots of other things coming. I tell you, I've got something interesting coming this week as well. But hopefully I should get to release this week. Don't know if you know Elton John's Funeral for a Friend. Yeah, with that fabulous synth intro. So I've got something interesting coming around that. So I've been recreating Funeral for a Friend. The intro of it. I haven't got the Elton John piano part in here. Elton was a bit busy last week, so he didn't. But I have got some of it. So the recreation. I've been working on that with an amazing synth part that I found out was created monophonically. So it sounds like big multi-note chords, but it's actually monophonically. David Hetchell, the engineer, recorded one note, one part of it, then recorded the next part of it, then recorded the next part of it, and so on, and built this huge symphonic thing up. So I didn't do it that way. I've recreated those sounds as well, so the sounds will be available to recreate that. So I should have that out later this week. Switching over to builds, we did get some builds last week, didn't we? I think we've got a couple. No Canary builds, but we did get a couple of builds from Microsoft. So I think a Windows 10 build as well. I keep forgetting they released. There's still a Windows 10 inside the program.
Yeah.
So there was for 26100, that's on release preview. So 26100 is the current stable channel, isn't it? So release preview gets some extra bits and pieces. So with some fixes. and an update for the widget board. I would call it Ouija board. It's not a Ouija board in Windows 11. That would be too much. I think a widget board. And there were some fixes in there. If you're on Windows 10 and in Windows Insider program, there were some fixes in there. Mainly input fixes and things like that. If you're on the beta program, which is where all the fun is, I think, more or less at the moment, because this is where the 23H, this will be what, 23H2, at some point this will go to 24, won't it? This has got an updated lock screen, which has got the media player on the bottom. I'm sure we had the media player on the lock screen back in Windows 8 days, didn't we?
Was it 8 or 7? Yeah, I mean, certainly had it there.
Well, actually, I suppose they've moved the position of it rather than, it's not a new thing. It's the moving the position. They've moved it down to the bottom. I seem to remember it being up in the top left-hand corner. So they've added that, and there's just a couple of fixes in there as well. Windows, the beta channel is still based on 23H2, and if we go back to a dev one, which is actually back to 19th of August, that is 24H2. So that's where we currently are. 24H2 is on dev, but we'll soon go to beta and then release preview and out. Whereas beta is still on these lower builds, the 2600, and 2600 is release, and then 226 is up for the beta. It's actually quite, look at those build numbers. That's quite interesting, isn't it? That the beta channel has got 22635 and the release preview has got 26100. So the release preview that must be a 24H2. It is, yeah. So release preview is now on 24H2. The beta is on 23H2, and dev is on 24H2.
Yes.
But as we've been saying for a while now, where we could dedicate whole shows to builds of Windows 11 and all these things changes, these are now just updates. It's like when you get a patch on your phone now. It's not really that exciting anymore. You're not. I remember when the Android days, you went from cupcake to eclair to donut. It was a big thing, wasn't it, to get those? And but now, yeah, these are incremental changes and fixes on there. So anyway, good to see those. I'm not doing build videos on these because they're just not worth doing the changes on them at the moment. But yeah, it is good. It's good to see Microsoft continue to work on that. I'll tell you, I've got a bit of sad news. My Denon receiver that I've had since 2007, surround sound, has stopped putting output on the right channel.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, so it's a 5.1 receiver with subwoofer, and so I'm just deciding what to do for that now. I could get another receiver, wire it up to the existing speakers, but part of me now really wants to. I was thinking of just getting rid of all that complexity and going for a Sonos soundbar and maybe one of the subwoofers. I thought this whole thing would be sort of too expensive when I looked at the price of subwoofers, but actually they've got two subwoofers now. They've got they call it a mini one, but it looks actually quite big.
Mm-hmm.
The big one is big because I did test one of those when I reviewed it for Sonos a few years ago, and that's almost too big to find anywhere to put it. But the mini one looks a bit smaller and a bit more suitable to a UK living room size. So what I was thinking now, that they've got a few different options. They have a big Sonos bar, the Arc, and then they've got a smaller one. So I think I would probably go with the smaller one, but it does support Dolby Atmos. Will I be disappointed by losing my two rear speakers if I just go for a soundbar and a sub and don't have the two rear speakers? So, but I'll gain Dolby Atmos but lose the rear speakers.
Yeah, it's one of these. I mean, virtual. I mean, the idea of this virtual rear speaker stuff and the way Dolby Atmos works and plays on your brains, psychoacoustics, is very effective. I have to say, it does work really, really well. But I still feel actually having more speakers is better. But we'll see. I've been doing things. I don't know if you. Let's get this camera on. But do you recognise one of those?
Yeah, it looks like a hi-fi system.
That is a TX H500 system, which I happened to find when I was digging out some boxes, and I thought, I wonder if that still works, because that's quite a few years old now, and
Yeah.
it does, and it sounds amazing. I was just forgotten how good. I've got it up, hooked up some Kef UniQ speakers, which I also had in
Oh,
storage.
Kef speaker's good, yeah.
Yeah, the Kef UniQ ones are just brilliant. And this just plain CDs on it. It really shows you how the quality has declined, and how we've got used to declined quality over the years. I mean,
Yeah.
we get some good stuff anyway. But what's interesting about that, it's got a mini disc player on there, which is a format that many people may or may not remember. But it doesn't work most of the time. It just sits there saying reading, reading, reading. What I've discovered though is if you turn it on its side, it works. Which is
Right,
really
yeah.
weird. And I can't actually think of why that would be. I can't think of any mechanical reason why that would be the case. So if any readers and listeners have got any ideas why that would be the case and what I could possibly do to actually fix it permanently so it actually works on its flat, that'd be interesting to know that.
Oh, yeah, interesting. And have you got a massive mini disc collection?
I've got quite a few bits of mini disc stuff. I've got quite a lot of stuff I recorded back in the day when I used to do radio stuff. So mini disc was the recording back to a choice once we were moved away from synth cassette. So it'd be nice to play some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's. I mean, when it plays on the mini disc, it sounds again phenomenal. It's really really good, even with the compression level they had on
Yeah.
this. So yeah, it's definitely nice to have it back and working. It's got pride of place in the studio now. So.
Oh yeah, that sounds great. It's the nice the old separates are nice. I mean, I've got my Denon amp up there.
Yeah.
And that's must be 30 years old, that one. And it still works great. I use it for monitoring in here. And the CD player, I didn't check. I think we talked about it in the show, but I did fix the tape player. The tape player is all up and running now. But yeah, it's nice to have those things. And is it all separate units?
It is all separate units, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
So and they do integrate well as well. They've got a nice integrated remote control system on them. So you turn on the amp and turn it to CD, and the CD comes on, starts playing, and all that sort of stuff. So it's nice in that respect. It's got the convenience of a combined stack with the actual individual discrete units, with all the benefits which come from that, and the decent power supplies and isolation and all that stuff. It's
yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Though the all that stuff, like with mine, it went up in the loft for a long time until I brought it down in here. And then you remember why you did it. You know, you get the extra thick speaker cables and all that kind of thing, and you got your separation and there's no delays or lags or anything on that. So.
It's funny when you actually start, but even plugging a digital source into it, you hear it's got a quality to it, so it's good. Yeah, it's good. I mean, I must admit, I did actually when I replaced it because I got the Panasonic SA XR45 digital high amplifier, which is basically a surround sound system, but I used it just as a stereo. And that had a way better sound than anything I'd ever heard at the time, pure digital. And I still think that's actually probably got a better sound than this, but this is good, especially the UniQ speakers. The UniQ speakers are amazing, really good. But yeah, so I've wired Alexa into it as well, so I can still use it as that and. Compare and contrast with the Echo Studio I've got to see how good that could.
Oh yeah.
Because Echo Studio does sound good. I have to say it's a really good sounding bit kit, but not like this. It's definitely quality of the analog amplification.
Yeah. So what you need now is a nice tape. Have you got a tape player for it?
I've got a tape player on it as well.
Oh yeah.
Good tape player on it as well. All the good stuff. Auto rewind. It's dual sided as well, which is nice. It doesn't even have to be kind to rewind it. So corrections.
You see some nice these things will come around now. You see people with some nice reel to reels and things like that, and they look superb, don't they, as an artifact now, just playing. My granddad had reel to reels, and then he got rid of them all in the 70s, I think, and replaced it with all cassettes. But you see, they're expensive now. I even see on like some of the music tech news groups, and forum Reddits and places that people are buying Fostex multitracks. You know, the 4-track Fostex to do music multitracking, and I think probably just the wrong age for that, because I remember I was impressed by them because at the time I only had a 2-track audio cassette, so a 4-track was great, but I mean, yeah, the quality of them is not brilliant when you listen to them, and I guess it's all this lo-fi thing, isn't it? But yeah, but what you could do on your PC now with music recording, at the time in the late 80s, I would have loved one. I never got one. I ended up borrowing one a couple of times. There is a lot it opens this new world for multi-tracking bouncing and stuff, but terrible quality.
I had a Tascam multi-track tape deck, which was really little cassette deck one, which was really nicely done.
Yeah.
That worked really well. Used that for the radio show. Actually, that's what I recorded my masterpiece piece of music, which went on to be the German theme music for the show. But that was really good. But that's actually one of the reasons I went for this in the end, because I've been so impressed with Tascam, and Tascam TAP were basically the same brand. I thought, well, if they're good on their audio, their actual studio stuff, maybe they'll be good on their audio stuff, and they really will. So that's good. It's nice to have a bit of retro occasionally. Talking about really retro, I don't know if I mentioned this on the show, but I actually dug out my old cine projector. That's the other thing I found.
Oh, nice.
Digging. So which absolutely amazed me by working first time out of the box. And it's been sitting in that box since 1989, I believe. So unused. And you kind of expect from something like that all the rubber bands and everything will perish. But what I'd forgotten was this is actually direct drive, so it's all gears. So it didn't have anything in it to perish. So it still works. And the one bit which really surprised me is the microphone pickup, and it still works, because they go quite regularly on these things, so they oxidize. And talk about low fidelity sound. It's definitely.
So this is a camera.
No, this is the projector. So I've still got a single 8 Fuji camera as well. That's not sound, but I did have a sound camera for a little while. Which unfortunately got destroyed by my sister throwing it down the stairs at one point. But sisters, you'd have to love them really. So that didn't really survive. But this is what make it is actually. Bear with me 1 second, caller. I will find out what make it is, because I can't remember. There we go. It's a Sankyo. Do you remember Sankyo? There we go. Big box.
Blimey.
One of those.
Yeah.
So Sankyo sound. Good bit of kit. It's really heavy. But yes, it surprised me by working first time, which was really good. I was digging out some old stuff to play on it. But it's I'm going to do what you did and convert all my cine to video. But I've actually invested in an old school cine video converter. So one of these things with the lens, the mirror and the lens. So I'm going to see if I can actually get that to work and do some transfers, and then I suppose the family at Christmas with films from their distant past.
They are brilliant when you do that. I looked when I did ours. I know we talked about it at the time. There was various things you can buy. You can get on Amazon where you put the film in but they were about £300, I think. But the other way is to do what my granddad did, which I never kept, but he did to a VCR. Some. I think he had a unit that fitted on the cine camera or the projector itself. I think, is that what you're talking about? That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is really simple. It's basically a V-shaped box. One side's a mirror, one side's a rear projection screen. You project onto the mirror, and it goes onto the rear projection screen, and then you film the rear projection screen. And you have to do it in dark, otherwise it doesn't really work that well. But it should work, and you should give a really good image, because you're quite close up, and I mean the bulb on that projector is really bright, so I'm expecting to get a very good image out of it.
Yeah.
And that concentrated, we should get a decent transfer. And then I've just got to work out how to set the camera up to recording for it, but it should be pretty straightforward to do it. I mean, it's the thing I'm getting is actually vintage. It's 1981 vintage, still in its packaging unopened. So that's going to be quite interesting.
And it would have been sort of, even in 81, it was kind of retro thing because those projector reels were sort of kind of not a thing by the 80s, weren't they? It was a sort of
They
60s,
started
late
like
60s, early 70s, wasn't it?
the 70s, 80s. They did go into the 80s. I mean, you can
Yeah.
still certainly buy. I mean, that projector. I think about 87, something like that.
Right.
The sound, home sound city was the thing because video was really expensive back then to actually go. Because you remember the old big massive Betamax cameras, which they do all the things and stuff that was the sort of thing you could have at that point. And then started getting smaller. When I got my first video camera in late 80s. It's it's good stuff.
It's something the family ones especially, but there's something special about seeing those old films because sadly there's people who are no longer around on them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of ones I've got which are relatives of mine who sadly passed away not that long ago, and it's lovely to see them on that. And so
and just to see. Just to see that capture. I mean, when I saw those ones of the 60s that I had, just it seems like a different place. It's you see people, the people wandering around all looking like old people, even though they were young people. It's really interesting to see those, and especially when they've got a family connection.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm looking forward to having a go at that. It's good, but that's going to be a project. I mean, I've got so much Super 8 and Single 8 film. Do you remember Single 8? That was Fuji's special film, which is thinner than Super 8, so you could get more on the reel. So you get, I think it's 4 minutes instead of 3 minutes or something on one of the little reels which you used to have in your cameras. So I've got about 40 of those to go through. some of them. What was quite intriguing actually, because I was quite into filmmaking and stuff back in the day, and I actually made a science fiction film. And it's all stop motion and stuff. But what I did, I actually did laser shots on it, and the way I actually did it, I couldn't remember doing this. I must have done this on it. I actually animated on each individual frame by scratching the film to get the laser shots.
Yeah,
and it looks amazing. There's a long lost ability to do that.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, you'll have hours of fun going through all those
stuff. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah, I love the old stuff like that as well. It's something physical. I think seeing things going around and all that kind of stuff. What else have you got going on the smart home front?
Well, smart home. I think I have mentioned this before. But my little project to. With a load cell to actually work out whether medicine's been taken or not.
Right. Yeah.
So the idea is if you sort of share, if you've got a bottle of medicine, you're giving it to a patient, and two of you are giving to the patient. How do you know that the other person hasn't given the medicine already? So to avoid that sort of double dosing. And what I came up with was the idea of using a miniature load cell, actually in the underneath the bottle. So when you pick the bottle up to take the dose, you're obviously ready for that. But when you put it down, it also can read the fact that the bottle's actually got lighter, so you can see the dose you've been taking and the day, and you can then tag that during the day to see when it is. So if anyone comes to pick it up, you can. And the way I've got it now rigged, and I've done it using I think there's a set of really nice components called M5 Stack, which is basically an ESP unit, ESP 386. Base, but you've got lots of things. They stack like Lego. They literally have little tags on the bottom, which very much Lego and stack like, and they just use a single cable connected between them. And what they do a unit only about that big, which has got a scale on it, and then you can just put an ESP on the unit, and then you can have that as a website. You can trigger things off the back end of that. So what I've got now is I'm trying to get this to work with smartphones. It's been a bit challenging, but I've got it to working directly, so that it will actually. If you pick it up, the bottle up, and you've already given the dose of the day, Alexa tells you you've given the dose for the day already. You get a verbal warning that you've flashed the lights red, so the dose has already been given. But it's interesting. Again, it actually takes me back to my old days of working in chocolate factories and doing load cells. So I did a lot of stuff with load cells. And the problem with chocolate is you don't get stable measure, because you can imagine chocolate comes from the top of the tank and it glops. It's like a viscous melon, it hits the bottom.
Yeah.
Medicine does the same. because it's very thick and it glops as it goes up and down. So you might take a bit out or move the bottle and it shake, and that obviously triggers it. And then as you immediately put down the load cell, the weight's dropped. But then a couple of seconds later, the medicine settles again, and the weight's gone back up again because it's actually weighing the globule in motion effectively. So you get you have to sort of do some nice sort of balancing of that and smoothing out to actually get it to work properly. But it seems to be working anyway. It's quite an interesting project. Really cheap, these M5 units. Just trying to look it up before I came on there to see what it is. But they do a whole load of stuff. So it's like the Core, which is their Core S3 ESP32 chip set. Now the ESP32s are quite cheap anyway. But this is the box which got a screen and everything. It's about 40 quid. So that's quite a nice little unit. But they do a stick unit which is even cheaper. It's about 20 quid. And the unit itself for doing the weighing, which I'm struggling to find it again at the moment, I think is around about £15. So it's not this whole thing because I went for the cheapest ESP unit I could get from those. I think it's cost me £36 to put this together in total. So it's not bad. And it works really well. But they do all sorts of things. They do electronic devices. They do relays. They do clocks to units. They even do audio devices. You can create your own Alexa type device. You can create your own voice controller. And my favourite thing they do is what they call the M5 stack dial. Actually, let me share my screen just briefly if I can get it to work. Let's see if it's so. This thing here, which I think is gorgeous. It's basically a round touchscreen knob.
Oh, I've seen. It looks a bit like the one on the Nest, doesn't it? That kind of.
Yes, it is. Or the controller in a Jaguar car, as someone described it as, where you can do temperature, and you can use it as a thermostat type thing. But you can just program them to do virtually anything you like.
There's a soft synth manufacturer, Churro developers, and they've made a keyboard, and it's got a center rotating display, color display, which I think looks very much like that.
Yeah, and it's basically got what they call the stamp unit in the back, which is a fully blown ESP32 unit with all the connectors all on it, and it's got some nice pinouts on it, so you can plug anything you like into it. It's quite a nice form factor. Screw down as well, so you've got a screw down bit on the back, so you can just have it on surface mounted. Yeah, it looks quite.
And then how do you program or control that? Is it through a Pi or?
No, you can.
Arduino.
You can put Arduino code onto it. They've got their own proprietary software for it. You can use what's ESP Home on it, which is the ESP control system suite, which works with a couple of the smart home systems. So that's quite useful. I think if it says on here, actually, the sort of things you can software, but it's got lots of ability to do it. And you can see it's got RFID built in. It's got all sorts of wonderful things that's on that. So you can use that as a lock almost. It's got RFID detection built into it. And you can also have an external battery on it. So there's lots of potential things you could actually do with it. So yeah,
amazing. Yeah. They've
got a lot of really nice bits on there. Let's just go back to the first page just quickly. But they use this Grove cabling, so you can actually just connect them all together. And as I said, the base units, all these little square stack units, they just stack on top of each other as a bit like Lego, which is quite nice. So you can just create virtually anything you like out of them, which is quite a nice thing.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
It's an
interesting project. That
Yeah, so I think more things I can possibly do on this to try and get to work, do more stuff. But there's not a really nice. Can you do your watering sensor for your stuff? It's a bit like a the Pi infrastructure, but actually cheaper in some ways and less power consuming as well, of course, because the ESP stuff is not doesn't tend to consume that much power. So
Oh, that's really interesting. That, yeah, I
So,
like
yeah,
that. Yeah, so you'll have to keep us up to date on that one.
yeah. I'll come up with if I come up with any new wrinkles on it, I'll let you know. But yes, good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I'd definitely like to. Yeah, let's like to see that one. It's great when you can get your teeth into a project where you've got a use case. No one else has got it, but you have. So
Yeah,
you've got like a clear idea then of what you
yeah,
want to achieve.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that. But then that you probably find as with all these things, you once you start doing that, you find there's other people who also have the same need for it as well. So yeah, it's often something you can share later.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
It's
I
good.
like I like that idea. Yeah, I haven't done any stuff like that for a while, but it, it's always great. It's great when you've got these things out, these things in your head, isn't it? That you can just only if I had some more time.
Yeah, if only, if only.
Yeah, yeah,
It's, so,
yeah,
yeah, lots of things, even a print.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's interesting.
that's the sort of thing I'm using. I'm using a smaller version of that, especially like a stack. That one does 20
Mm,
kilos. The one I'm using, it does goes up to 5 kilos. It's more of a
yeah,
it's a
you
scale you
need
get on top of.
the very small micro values, don't you, to
Yeah.
for that you're doing.
Yeah. So and unfortunately, the one which does the smaller weight is a lot cheaper. So the
Ah.
big one is a lot more expensive, which takes a lot more weight. But yeah, it's quite good. It's so many bits and pieces I do. Anyway, yeah.
You can have all sorts of fun with those. Like, you build them into furniture, couldn't you? And you know when someone's sat on a certain seat, so you
Yeah.
can have the lights or the
But
speakers. Or
that was actually the inspiration for it. I was thinking because going back to my favorite subject of EVs, the reason this inspired this was I was actually thinking about the way that the Volkswagen cars have their turn on functionality, which is basically you sit in the seat and it turns the
yeah,
car on because it's done that. It's got that load balance in it, and they can actually detect different weights and work out different movements and work out basically who's sitting on the car in the car. So that's quite an interesting concept, and I thought, yeah, I'm sure I can do something along those lines. So yeah, did put it together, and I'm pretty pleased so far. How
yeah,
it's working.
yeah. That's really interesting. That, yeah, you have to keep us up to date on that one.
Talking about EVs, I have got a bit of EV news as well. So this is starting to happen across various places. I've noticed that Octopus Energy's charging network has now offered this idea of off-peak charging, where at certain hours of the day you can get cheaper charging, and Instavolt, which is I think the largest EV rapid charging network in the UK, who, to be fair, got a bit of reputation at the moment for being one of the most expensive of the charging networks, have got a way now you can charge a bit cheaper. So if you're out and about between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., you can charge for 54p per kilowatt on an Instavolt instead of 85p per kilowatt
Right.
hour on stock. Now, you do at the moment have to use their app to be able to get that cheaper price, although they're going to try and do it onto contactless. I think they actually have to do it onto contactless. Don't think they're allowed to offer a different price on the app to on his own contactless under the regulations. Um, but yeah, that's good to see. We're actually getting some change around that idea because I mean it brings it a bit more in line with what happens to home charging. Home charging, you do get a lot cheaper price if you can charge off peak.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, it's good to see that, and it looks like that's going to go across a lot more of the networks in the next few weeks. So that'll be good to see.
yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot going on with the charger stuff. It's still got to shake out, but I think energy prices stabilizing means there's more offers and things like that now.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to get someone on from one of the charging networks to talk a bit about that at some point. Um, either here or on my EV owner channel, but I'm sure we can
Yeah,
share some content if it's interesting.
yeah,
Talk about
absolutely.
my EV owner channel. Just shout out that I'm actually EV driver channel, EV driver show. I'm recording this weekend with Alex Lowe, who was on one of our show interviews we had. talking about the state of EV market, and he's got a lot of insider knowledge on what's actually happening with the tariffs and things, which will be an interesting call to see how the manufacturers are meeting that targets. I mean, one of the interesting I want to talk about is Jaguar's strategy, where they basically have said they're not producing any new models this year, or they're not actually selling any cars for the next year. While they produce those new EVs. And that's quite an interesting concept, because the tariffs, I believe, are based on a percentage of sales. You have a certain percentage of your sales have to be EVs. So if you're not selling any cars, then you don't have to meet any tariffs and you won't get fined.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
yeah,
interesting strategy. I'm not sure that's the truth, but I want to talk about that. So yeah, that's so I'm recording that on Friday, and that'll be out sometime early part next week. I'll probably talk about it on next week's show. But,
yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah. So talking next week's show, Alex mentioned earlier on, we've got a sound designer coming on next week, and musician that's actually based in the UK. And then the week after, we've got a pretty famous sound designer as well coming on the show as well, should make it quite interesting. So yeah, interesting couple of guests we've had, and the Dan Phillips and the Pete Brown episodes are still being downloaded and watched and listened to. So thanks to everybody who's enjoying that content as well. So they proved to be really interesting topics. So we have really enjoyed doing those. So whereabouts do we find your channel, Gary?
Yeah, so on YouTube, the EV Owner channel, which is a bit of a misnomer, because up until now I've never been an EV owner. I've only ever had them on lease or contract hire. EV lease or EV contract hire, but it was more general than that. And yeah, so the EV Owner channel on YouTube, and it's the EV Driver Show. So that's what's going to be coming out. And if you want to catch up a few back episodes of that, some really interesting stuff on there. You may, if you're coming to the world of EVs, it's worth a listen to.
Yeah.
One of my friends has just been on an interesting adventure on his EV. He's actually driven all the way down to the southern tip of Portugal in an EV and back up, and had no issues at all charging in Europe. He had some problems in the UK charging, but in Europe he had no problems at all charging. And what he particularly noticed was how far advanced France has got on its charging network from being. I mean, a few years ago, I would never have recommended driving in France with an EV, because it was really appalling to try and get charging. There are tiny little networks everywhere with different charging plugs, even a different charging plug to the rest of Europe. But they've really improved. Every services has now got really decent charging, competition as well, driving prices down. And it's. He said it was a very nice surprise to find it as easy as it was.
Oh yeah, that's good. Excellent. And what's your where can get people find you on social media?
Oh, social media, look for @Garry with 2 R's WMA on the X's, whatever with threads. I think I'm on virtually all the networks somewhere.
Yeah.
But I don't post as regular as I used to, but yeah.
I must admit, I don't use X or Twitter half as much as I used to. I used to love it, but not that now. But I still keep the channel on there, and you can find us. But you can find us on the channel as well. That's where most of my things are nowadays. Right, well, great. That was great catching up. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with your projects.
Yes, I've got some more ideas to work on that as well, so it'll be good.
Yeah. So we'll be back next week with our guest, and so you can drop me email, ian@thislifestyle.com. Don't forget our podcast survey. I'll leave the link in the show notes, and we'll see you next week.
Take care.